Good morning. Warm greetings to everyone on another session of India-Ireland Friendship Lecture Series, and very warm welcome to Mr. Nithin Sridhar, who is with us today to share his views on Vedanta philosophy under the topic Relevance of Vedanta for Contemporary World. Mr. Nithin is the Director and Chief Curator of INDICA Center for Moksha Studies, also mentioned as Advaita Academy. He writes on spirituality, religion, culture, politics, ecology, and social issues. Based in Mysore in the Indian state of Karnataka, although trained as a civil engineer who has worked in the construction field, Mr. Nithin has moved to journalism since 2015. He has authored 6 books on various aspects of Hindu culture and practices. His first book, Musing on Hinduism, provides an overview of various aspects of Hindu philosophy and society. His another book, Samanya Dharma, enunciates upon general tenets of ethics as available in Hindu texts. And his latest book, Isopanishad, an English commentary, is an translation and commentary on one of the prominent Hindu texts. His upcoming book is a commentary on the opening verses of Manu Smriti. He also teaches courses on Hinduism for INDICA courses and regularly contributes articles and delivers lecture on religion, spirituality, and culture at various platforms. Earlier he had also served as the editor of INDICA Facts, a portal on Indian history and culture. Before I invite Mr. Nithin Sridhar for his lecture, I would request His Excellency Mr. Akhilesh Mishra to kindly give introductory remarks to today's lecture.
Namaskar. Thanks, Emma ji. Very warm welcome, Nithin ji, to this program. As you probably know, we have started India Ireland Friendship Lecture Series with the idea of spreading the wisdom and positive stories coming from India among the Irish audience, and also a lot of inspiring developments in Ireland, which are not so well known in the Indian audience. So we were using this as a virtual platform to disseminate information about each other's success stories and promote mutual learning and also promote people-to-people connects. And your lecture is very important to us in view of Honorable Prime Minister Modi's visionary call to the nation about Panch Pran, and also his vision of Amrit Kal, preparing the nation for the next 25 years. And the theme of culture in understanding of India and connecting India's future with the rich, fertile land of the past, that is a very important mission for the nation as a whole. And Vedanta itself, to me personally, is a very central theme, central element of India's identity, India's democracy, India's pluralism, India's richness and diversity, its ability to assimilate so many thoughts, even contradictory thoughts. I think we owe to the wisdom of great sages, great rishis who gave us this wisdom of Vedas and Vedantas and Upanishads. And not only for India, but I think Vedanta wisdom has tremendous relevance for contemporary society all over the world because first of all, it strikes to me that Veda literally means to know. And therefore, it is based on individual inquisitiveness. It's not based on imposed dictate of what is to be known and what is the reality. It's self-realization. That is the key defining feature of our Vedic tradition. Secondly, knowing how do we know reality? The Western modern attitude has been to rely too much on your egoistic sense approaches and focus too much on senses. Whereas the Indian rishis cautioned us about the limitations of our senses. Yat chakshusha na pashyati yena chakshushu pashyati. Yad vagap anubhedite yena vagap yuddhitam. This is, I think, a key difference between the Western approach to grasping reality and Indian approach, Sanatan Dharmi approach to understanding and grasping reality. A second aspect which to me distinguishes Indian tradition with the Western tradition is inherently having an integrated approach. Like you, I'm also an engineer, and I know that in the Western knowledge education system, we tend to simplify and compartmentalize different areas of knowledge. Whereas in Indian tradition, uh, it's inherently integrated, holistic, complex system approach. And you have written very wonderful book on Isha Upanishad. The very first line itself, Isha Vasamidam Sarvam Yat Kinch Jagatyam Jagat, gives us the vision of comprehensive integrated existence. And today, the international community has become cognizant of the dangers to one planet. But in Indian ethos, since time immemorial, we are not only focused on one planet, we have focused the whole cosmic existence as one single entity. Vishwam bhavatyeka needam. Pari vishwa bhunani yayam ritasya tantum vitatam drishekam. So not only this planet Earth, but also Dehu Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Prithvi Shanti, Apah Shanti. So not just this one planet, but also we want peace in the atmosphere, peace in the skies, the celestial bodies, the water, all natural elements. Not only Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, but the oneness of the entire existence. Plants, animals, birds, inanimate bodies. We are all part of one single existence. Vishwam bhavatyeka needam. So this thought itself is very beneficial at the time when world is divided, fragmented, and we are facing tremendous stresses and strains within oneself, and also man versus man on so many levels. Man versus nature is a big crisis. So I think we need to pause and think about where we are heading. And in that direction, I think Vedanta can show us the way forward. Once again, Nithinji, my very sincere gratitude to you for accepting our invitation. And we admire your tireless efforts in reviving a proper understanding of Indian culture and Indian philosophical traditions. Once again, very warm welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Akhilesh ji, for inviting me and for the beautiful introduction for this lecture. I think you have put forward in a very beautiful, in a very enriching manner, the vision of our rishis, the vision of our shastras, that ultimately it is the reality of oneness. It is that should be the vision, that should be the background in all our dealings with the diversity. So the beauty of Sanatana Dharma, Bharatiya civilization is that it focuses on both the underlying oneness as well as the manifest diversity in various forms. Thank you very much. So let me just share my screen for my presentation. Just a second. Is this visible? Okay. So topic given to me is today is relevance of Vedanta for contemporary world. And as I was reflecting upon the title for preparing for this presentation, I thought that I should start with a brief reflection on the the three words here, the Vedanta, of course, but also on the notion of relevance and contemporary world, notion of relevance in contemporary world. So my opening thoughts will begin from there. The term Vedanta is basically Veda and Anta. The Anta means the end or the zenith or the highest teaching of the Veda. So to appreciate this, I mean, there are many modern scholars who take this to mean that the Upanishad was a chronologically later text written, hence it is called as Anta, but that is not the view of the tradition. The view of the tradition that there is no chronology because the Veda is not a human creation, it is Apaurishaya. So, but so in what sense is Veda, is the Anta, Vedanta or Upanishadic teaching is the end or the zenith? It is with regards to the nature of the teaching itself. So when you understand Veda, when you examine the content of the Veda, you can broadly divide the Vedic texts, the Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishads. So there is the Karma Khanda, which is the Mantra Brahmanas. There is Upasana Khanda, which is Aranyakas, and there is Jnana Khanda, which is Upanishads. Karma means that dealing with action, that dealing with dharma. So basically, mantra brahmanas are those which teach about dharma, which tell us what action constitutes dharma and hence is beneficial, what action constitute adharma and hence harmful. So the very definition of dharma is that which is beneficial, is that which leads one to, it gives rise to karma phala or the fruit of action in the form of punya or karmic merit, which leads to sukha or happiness, swarga or a notion of a state of heaven for the lack of any other English word after death, and chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind, eventually leading to moksha. Whereas adharma is the opposite, that which leads to more and more suffering, all those actions. So the mantra brahmana portions deal with this karma khanda, and based on that, the smriti tradition, the dharma shastra tradition expand upon this on what is considered dharma, what constitutes adharma. So this is one important teaching of Veda. The second is Upasana Kanda, whereas the Aranyakas speak about different forms of Upasana. Upasana means meditation, Upasana means worship, devotion, all different meanings are possible. So basically, Upasana Kanda deals with Devata Upasana, that is worship and meditation on the Devatas, on various types of meditation. It need not be Devata Upasana as we understand popularly, that is included, but it could be even impersonal, abstract notions of meditations also. And then we have Upanishads, which is called as the end or the highest. It teaches what is called as Brahma Vidya or the Atma Jnana, which is basically the knowledge of the self. We will just explain that what Brahma Vidya is at the later part of the lecture. But it is this Brahma Vidya, the teaching of the Brahma Vidya, which is called as the zenith of all teachings. Why? Because it stands on the foundation of dharma and upasana, dharma and bhakti. Because only when one practices the dharma, the karma anusthana, and also practices the upasana of some kind, only then one becomes eligible to even become a develop eligibility criteria to even practice the Upanishadic teachings. So Upanishad teachings comes at the very end because it has to do with the highest goal of life, and we will just see all this very briefly in the course of today's presentation. But before going there, as I said, I was reflecting upon the very notion of contemporary relevance. I mean, this is a very popular phrase and we use it very widely, especially with respect to Indic knowledge systems, which has a history of 2000, 3000 or 5000 years, or which is nitya, eternal. But when we use this phrase contemporary relevance, we use it in a particular way, whether we realize it or not. It comes with certain underlying assumptions, the most important of which is the notion that knowledge itself is transient, and that knowledge is human creation, and therefore it is transient, and it is relevant only to a particular point of in time, and it will necessarily become irrelevant going forward in a different point of time. So we often see in the context of modern science, for example, that is true also. Newton created certain assumptions, certain theories of science, physics, and later Einstein and many others gave a different theories and kind of refuted him. We unfortunately kind of copy paste the same understanding in dealing with Bharatiya Parampara also, in dealing with the Shastriya knowledge also. Because the notion, this contemporary relevance, when we acknowledge, when we say that some aspects of past are relevant today, now, here and now, even when we say this, it is always provisional. There is a kind of a notion that it has an expiry date. It may be relevant today, so let us deal with it somehow. Let us try to make it relevant somehow by changing it, by modifying it, and removing what is not relevant. So this is a notion of contemporary relevance that is used in normal parlance, by many different people. However, today I will not be speaking of the relevance of Vedanta in this sense of having a expiry date. This is not the way in which I will be arguing for the relevance, contemporary relevance, or any relevance of Vedanta. Why? Because our tradition, our Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, our Rishi Parampara, the Hindu view or Indic view is that the Veda is Nitya. That is, it is eternal. And second, it is Apaurishaya. Now, Apaurishaya has different aspects. We don't need to get into all those things. One aspect to focus on is it is not a human composition. It is not a creation of human mind and thought. Sure, it is not that there was no human element. Our rishis are definitely human elements. They are called as mantra drashta, the seers of the mantra. Even when they are called mantra kartas, even there the karta portion is only in the sense that they put into writing or they put into a human language what they saw in a higher state of samadhi, in a higher state of meditation, what was revealed to them by nature, what was revealed to them by Brahman itself. Because even the texts say that when there is in the beginning of every cycle of creation, the Prajapati Brahma himself meditates and he is able to get the Vedic knowledge of the previous cycle, and based on that knowledge, he recreates a new cycle. So the Veda is eternal. It was there in the previous cycle, it will be there in next cycle. I'm speaking about the cycle of creation and destruction, not the cycle of 1 year, 10 year, 10 year generations, not even of a 1 million or 2 million years, right? Now, these are two very, very important phrases, Veda being Nitya and Veda being Apurusha. Veda being Nitya or eternal implies that the teaching that Veda gives us, be it Dharma or Upasana or the Jnana, they're always relevant. They are not transient. These teachings worked thousands of years before. It will work today. It will continue to work in future. Whether we have the competency to make it work or not is a very different issue. Being the nature of Kali Yuga, being the fact that we are in the Kali Yuga, our competencies have enormously decreased. So we may not be able to practice everything, but that is our own deficiency. That is not the deficiency of the Shastras. That is not the deficiency of the Veda. That is not the deficiency of the teachings of the Rishis. So these teachings are eternally relevant. So Veda, and the notion of Veda as not being a human composition implies that its teachings are free from human defects such as error, bias, prejudice. So this means that the correct approach to Veda, which includes Upanishads or even the whole Vedic tradition, including the Smriti, Puranas, etc., is to take them as Shastra Pramana or the Shabda Pramana. So Ambassador Ji was speaking about how it is important today to understand how knowledge occurs. So we have in our tradition great debates, discussions, and inquiry into how this knowledge occurs, and that is what this notion of pramana, prameya, etc. is there. And tradition as a whole, we have identified 6 sources of knowledge, 6 independent sources of knowledge, which includes the direct perception, the pratyaksha, the anumana or the inference, and the comparison or upamana, and many others. And one of them is Shabda Pramana, which is Veda primarily, and those texts which are dependent upon the Veda, like Smritis, Dharma Shastra, Itihasa, Puranas. Now, that means that to understand Veda as a product of human work is to start in a wrong end, start with an error. So then when you once you put a wrong step, then it's a slippery slope. Then you will be speaking about it was relevant 3000 years before, it is not relevant today. That is a wrong approach, because the text, that Veda which teaches this, also the Veda which have been maintained by the tradition, we have the Vaidika Parampara, it also gives tools to understand the Veda. We have the all the Vedangas, we have the living tradition. It gives the tradition, it also gives the tools. We have the Mimamsa, the Nyaya, Vyakarana, we have the 6 Shiksha, Nirukta, and all the Vedangas. So all these are tools to understand Veda, and they say the Veda is a Shabda Pramana, and it has to be taken as a source which reveals knowledge independently, and so, therefore it cannot be refuted by using some other source, right? Now, with this understanding, let us now dwell a bit into why Veda and Vedanta, but focus will be on Vedanta here, continues to be relevant and necessary for mankind. This is a very loaded question, and I hope I won't be taking time beyond what is allotted to me. I still have some 8 slides to go. So let me begin in a different way. What is the one thing we all seek in life? I think that is the very, very basic question we all need to ask. In the, we are all living in a very fast life. We are living a very unhappy life, rat race everywhere, and pursuit of money, relationship, health, family, fame. We need to stop a second and ask ourselves, what do I seek most? Of course, our first answers will be, of course, say money, relationship, health, fame, power. You ask a 10 standard kid, they will say, I want to score highest in a board exam. You ask somebody in a corporate world trying hard for a promotion, they will say, I want promotion. There will be different people saying different things. Those who are unfortunately in the lower rungs of the society, they will say, I would need food for next day. Our context and situations changes, but the point is, what do we truly seek? It is really the money, health, relationship, etc. No, these are actually the means which we think, we perceive as leading to the actual goal which we all want, which is happiness, sukha, pleasure. This is one thing which is common to all human beings. It is throughout the ages, not just today, even 10,000 years back, it will be so even 10,000 years henceforth, that all of us truly want is happiness. And we believe that the pursuit of the worldly objects is the way to attain this happiness. However, the nature of the world is such that, unfortunately, the happiness that the objects of the world are able to give us, impart us, is transient. And it is always mixed with sorrow. And we don't need any Shastra, anybody else to tell this. This is a pratyaksha. This is a directly experience through our senses on an everyday basis. Say you are pursuing to get PhD, you are putting, you're slaving away yourself for the 5 years, and finally you attain PhD. You feel happy, definitely. But that happiness, how long will it last? 1 day, 1 week, 6 months maximum, 1 year maximum? It will not stay. And it will also bring with you some other, other issues, other tensions. What will I do now after this PhD? Can I do postdoc? Will I get research fellowship? How do I do? If I don't get it, what? All these tensions will be there. And in case I am unable to finish PhD and I have to drop out, then you will experience regret throughout your life. So that is sorrow. So the nature of the world is that worldly objects gives happiness, but that happiness is impure, in the sense it is always mixed with sorrow, and it is transient. It is not everlasting. But what is our desire? Nobody wants to suffer from pain and sorrow, right? What we truly desire is attainment of infinite happiness, everlasting, eternal happiness without even a trace of sorrow. That is our desire. That does not happen in our pursuit of the worldly objects. That's a different issue. But this is what we truly desire. Because nobody will say that I want to suffer. I want everlasting suffering. Nobody says that. Everybody will say, I want everlasting happiness. So this is where Vedanta will come to this picture, because this desire that I want infinite and eternal happiness without a trace of sorrow is inherent in us, is the innate desire, most innermost desire of all humankind of all the times. And it is the Vedanta which teaches how to attain this condition. How to attain this condition of everlasting happiness without bondage of sorrow. And it calls this state, for lack of better word, as moksha or liberation. Liberation from bondage of sorrow, liberation from the bondage of cycle of life and death. So many definitions are there. But moksha is what is everlasting happiness. Madhusudana Saraswati, in his Bhagavad Bhakti Rasana, very beautifully defines this. That the highest goal of life is everlasting happiness, untainted by any form of sorrow, even a trace of sorrow. Now, I made a statement that Vedanta is the path. It gives you the method, the means to attain it, that such everlasting happiness. So let me substantiate on this by briefly dealing with the very notion, the enunciation of notion of bondage and liberation in Vedanta in a very brief manner, in a very simplified manner, without going into any details. Now, according to Vedanta, that is according to the Upanishadic teachings, the human bondage and suffering is due to basically ignorance. Avidya, it is called. What is this avidya? It is ignorance of the true nature of reality. Since suffering and bondage is due to this ignorance about nature of reality, obviously the liberation would be, liberation from such a bondage would be due to knowledge about that reality, because only knowledge can destroy ignorance, and that is something we know from even experience. Say, I say I don't know physics, so that is ignorance about physics. Now, if I read a physics textbook and gain knowledge about physics, obviously I gain knowledge about physics which destroys the ignorance about physics, right? So now here the object of knowledge is not physics, but the ultimate nature of reality, the real nature of reality. And what does Vedanta teach? And this very important to know, that this nature, true nature of reality, it cannot be known from pratyaksha pramana, pratyaksha anumana, etc. Because why? Because when we see the world, what we are seeing so many objects, we are seeing bondage, suffering. That is what we see. We don't see that this true nature of reality. Therefore, we cannot infer it also. Therefore, we cannot use analogy and other methods also. Hence, Vedanta as a Shastra Pramana, Shabda Pramana comes into play. So, Vedanta or the Upanishads or the Veda reveals this knowledge about the true nature of reality. And what is this nature of reality? It is that the reality is one, it is infinite, one ekam, infinite anantam, it is eternal, that is anadi, and without end, without beginning, without end. and it is whole, homogeneous whole, without parts and without divisions. Nirvikalpa, right? And without form, without any particular form, and which is Satchidananda Swarupa, which is of the nature of Sat. Sat means existence. Chit means consciousness. Ananda means happiness or bliss. And this reality, the way the Upanishads call as Brahman. And this is to be understood here. This Brahman is not a monotheistic God. It is not one God who is separate from the creation. It is a non-dual. So that is another description of Brahman is, it is non-dual, Advaitam, right? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, and it is Advaitam. Satchidananda Swarupa, Advaita. See, all these words, references are found in Upanishads. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma is from Taittiriya Upanishad. The notion of Prapanchopashamam and Advaitam is found in Mandukya Upanishad. So many and so on and so forth. But the question is, if Brahman is the only reality, is the infinite truth, eternal truth, then what about what we perceive? Because in our Vyavaharika, in our daily life, we perceive I as a separate entity, an individual, we perceive Jagat or the universe, and we also infer that there must be a Karana or the cause of the universe, which is called as Ishvara. The Vedanta says, the Vedanta reveals to us that the Brahman, which is one non-dual infinite reality, by its own power of Maya, manifests as triple forms, manifests as Ishvara, which is God, for the lack of better word in English, Ishvara, who is Jagat Karana, who is the cause of the universe, who sustains the universe and who dissolves the universe also after a cycle, and again remanifests the universe again. So this is Ishvara. Brahman itself, by his power of Maya, manifests as Ishvara, and again Brahman itself manifests as Jivas, countless number of Jivas. Jivas are individual self, Jivatmas, which identify themselves with the body-mind complex. Like I call myself Nithin Sridhar, I am such an author, I stay here. You call some others. So we have all these Jivas. So all these different number of Jivas are also manifestation of Brahman itself through Maya. And then we have Jagat, the objective universe, which is also a manifestation of Brahman through Maya. And all this is a part of a cosmic play. It's a Leela eva Kaivalam. It's all Leela. Leela eva Kevalam, I think, not Kaivalam. Kevalam, if I remember correctly, this is from Gaudapada Karika and Mandukya. These are all cosmic play. In fact, this is apparent. We'll just deal with the notion of appearance. How does Maya achieve this? Now, you know, there is because Maya is a tricky term, lot of misconception are there. Maya, for our purpose, is not a independent entity. It is not something which is outside of Brahman. Maya is simply a special power of Brahman. It is a swabhava of Brahman. So this, only for a better communication, we say Maya as a Maya. We don't say directly Brahman. So this function of this special Shakti of Maya is to first conceal the real nature of Brahman. That is what avidya is all about. Concealing the real nature of Brahman and then projecting out the multiplicity in the form of Ishvara, Jiva, Jagat, Bheda. Right? Multiplicity, there is duality and multiplicity. There is duality of a subject, object. There is a multiplicity in the form of many, many objects of the universe. There is Ishvara, Jiva, Jagat, three different entities. So all these that we perceive in our Vyavahara, in our daily life, it is the function of Maya. And how does it, what does it mean at an individual level? It means that it manifests in the form of individual who is ignorant of his own true nature, his own true nature of his own self. He is ignorant. There is avidya about his true nature, that he is non-different from Brahman. So because of this ignorance, he self-identifies instead with the body-mind complex and functions in the external world. So what is happening is, every Jivatma in reality is Brahman itself. There is no difference in any format. But still, for the sake of Leela, a Leela is created such that all these Jivatmas are, due to avidya, the special power of Brahman, the Jivatmas are made to forget about their true self. It is concealed, and instead they become self-identified themselves with the body-mind complex and say that I am Nithin, I am this person, I have this nama and I have this rupa, and I function in this world. So this is the nature of bondage. So this being the nature of bondage, this being the case, Vedanta teaches that liberation is only possible when one destroys this avidya or ignorance by attaining knowledge about reality. What is this knowledge? The knowledge about reality that the external objective world, that is the Jagat, is merely an appearance, and that the Jivatma is not a body-mind complex, but it is truly non-different from Brahman. It is the Atman which is non-different from Brahman. So this is well summarized in the half verse as Brahma Satyam Jagat Mityam Jivo Brahma Ivanaparaha. It is important that Mithya term has again created a lot of confusions, lot of misunderstanding. Brahma Satyam means, here Satya means Nitya. Satya means that which always exists as it is without any form of change all the time. So Brahman is Satya in the sense it is the only reality, it is the eternal reality without undergoing any change. So it is non-transient eternal reality. The absolute opposite of Satya is not Mithya. The absolute opposite of Satya is Asatya, which is basically that which does not exist all the time. So Satya is Brahman, that which exists all the time, but Asatya is that which never exists. Not in the past, not in the present, not in the future. What is a example given in the tradition? It is the example of son of a widow. Son of a barren woman. So a woman who cannot conceive a child, if you speak about the son or a daughter of such a woman, it is only an imagination. It was not possible in the past, it will not become possible in the future, right? It is only an imagination. But our Jagat is not like that. We can see the Jagat, we function in the Jagat, we interact with the Jagat, we exist in the Jagat. So Jagat is Mithya in the sense that what we see and perceive, the duality, the multiplicity, they are merely an appearance. Mithya means appearance, they are an apparent nature. For example, when we are in a dream, when we are seeing in a dream, we interact with the dream, we indulge in the dream, we think the dream is true. As far as the dream is concerned, the dream is true. But only when we get up, then we realize that dream was not true. It was only an appearance. It was transient. Unless we get up, we don't know that, right? Similarly, the world is like a dream in the sense it is apparent reality. When this Vedanta Jnana dawns upon us, then we realize that the Jagat was Mithya. That Brahman alone is the true reality, true entity that alone exists. So at the highest level, Gaudapada says that there is neither bondage, no liberation. There is no mumukshu, no person who is trying to seek liberation. There is no liberation also, because at that stage Brahman alone exists. All other notions have already discarded, right? It is very difficult to intellectually understand it. But for our purpose, it is enough to understand that the liberating knowledge is the knowledge about true nature of reality, that Brahma Satyam Jagan Mityam Jivo Brahma Iva Naparaha. And this liberating knowledge, this knowledge that I am truly non-different from Brahman, I am not this body-mind complex, and that the external world is an appearance, is not the absolute truth. The reality of the external world is actually the reality derived from Brahman. because Brahman is the substratum of the Jagat. So this liberating knowledge is called by many names: Brahma Jnana, Atma Jnana, Brahm Atma Aikya Jnana, Aparoksha Jnana. Aparoksha Jnana means immediate knowledge, not a intellectual, indirect knowledge read from books. Immediate knowledge. Atma Sakshatkara, self-realization. So many words for the same thing. Now let me just drink little water. Now, just a few more slides. Now we just saw what Vedanta says about attaining what is bondage and what is liberation. But of course, it is very important that it does not stop with that. Vedanta not only clarifies about the ultimate goal of life, but it also reveals the method or the path of attaining it. And this method is called as Jnana Yoga or Jnana Sadhana or Shravana Chatushtaya. Again, different names. What is this 4-step process? The first step is Shravana. You approach a guru and he will teach you the Vedantic truths in the form of Mahavakya, in the form of Upanishadic teachings and other things. But the guru has to be Shrotriya Brahmanishta. That is, he has to be learned in the Shastras, in the Upanishads, in the Veda, in the Dharma Shastra. He has to be learned in the Shastra. And he has to have already also realized Brahman. He has to be a Brahmanishta. He has to become established in Brahman. So he has to already walk the path. It's not just talk the path. He has to already walk the path also. Both are important, because only a Brahmanishta guru may not be able to convey the teaching in a proper manner and clarify the doubts of the student. And only a Shrotriya or one who is studying the Shastra will not be able to take you to the highest goal, because he himself has not attained it. So Shrotriya Brahmanishta Shravana, the listening and learning under a teacher, is the first important step in the process. Then comes Manana, reflecting upon those teachings, getting clarified all the doubts, and arriving upon an intellectual conviction of the Vedantic truths that we just discussed about. The third is Nididhyasana, which is basically contemplation and meditation on these Vedantic truths until such a time they become stabilized. So now this Nididhyasana is like a meditation, but it is little bit different from meditation. It is a very special form of meditation or contemplation, you can say, wherein the object of meditation is the Vedantic truths, is the Upanishadic truths, especially the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads, Mahavakyas which teach the ultimate reality, such as Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, Tattvamasi, you are that, and such things. When this Nididhyasa becomes perfected and it matures, it eventually culminates in the destruction of avidya, destruction of the ignorance, thereby allowing the Atman, which was always free. Atman is always free. Atman is always shining. But because of the obstruction of avidya, we were not aware of it. So it was concealing it. So, but this Nididhyasa, when it matures, it destroys that avidya, thereby allowing the Atman to shine forth without any destruction, without any obstruction. Sorry. So this is called as Atma Sakshatkara, or the direct realization of the true self, or more properly, Aparoksha Anubhuti. You know, one of the texts of Shankaracharya is Aparoksha Anubhuti. Anubhuti, or the experience or the realization in a direct manner, in an immediate manner, not in an indirect manner. When the Shravana happens, when the teacher teaches you, it is indirect. If you are a very advanced seeker with all the competencies, then you may immediately get Atma Sakshatkara. But if you are a Mandabuddhi, if you are a not endowed with competencies, then you will need to practice Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana for a very long time, maybe over many lives, not just years, many lives, to attain Atma Sakshatkara, to travel from immediate knowledge to immediate knowledge. Now, it is important to understand that it is not easy to practice Jnana Yoga. For most of us, 99% of us, it is one thing to study the Upanishads, it is one thing to go to a teacher, learning, that's all good, you know, these are all feel-good factors. in Indica Moksha, we have so much content I have curated and we have put out for the benefit of the people to grasp basics of Vedanta. And this is very important, no doubt about it. But this is not enough. We need to actually practice Vedanta sadhana, to actually practice the Jnana Yoga with an intention to attain Atma Sakshatkara, Atma Jnana. We need to first work on developing the fourfold competencies which are called as sadhana chatushtaya. So what are these competencies? They are Viveka, Vairagya, Shatka Sampati, a group of 6 qualities, and Mumukshutva. Basically, Viveka is a discretionary knowledge and conviction that what is real and what is unreal, what is eternal, what is transient. A conviction that Brahman alone is real, the Jagat is transient. Jagat is unreal, it is only appearance. The reality, the real existence is Brahman. This is Viveka. And then there is Vairagya. This is most difficult to attain because we are all attached to worldly pursuit. But when the Viveka conviction is strong, then we will realize that the worldly pursuit is a pursuit of unreal. It will not lead to everlasting happiness. So we slowly start to withdraw. And when you withdraw from this worldly pursuit, and that is called as withdrawal, is called as renunciation, which is Vairagya, renunciation of all kinds of attachment of worldly pursuits. And then there is Shatka Sampati, a group of 6 qualities which are basically about withdrawal of the mind from the external objects and fixing them upon the innermost self, upon Brahman. They are called Shama, Dama, Uparati, Titiksha, Samadhana. Shamadama is Indriya Nigraha. Uparati and Samadhana is fixing of on the self. And Titiksha is forbearance. Shankaracharya beautifully defines it as Sahanam Sarva Dukkhanam Apratikara Purvakam Chinta Vilaparahitam Sa Titiksha Abhidiyate. Sahanam Sarva Dukkhanam. To experience all the suffering that the life throws at you with patience. What does this patience means? Apratikara Purvakam. It means without any frustration, any anger, any notion of revenge. If you have seen the movie Joker, it is a good example about what depression, what the problems in the life makes a person. He was full of bitterness, full of depression that takes him to criminality, right? Titiksha is the counter to that. Titiksha is the opposite of that. You go through the what life throws at you without losing control. Chinta vilapa rahitam. It is not that I am suffering inside with I'm tension, mind stress, depression, but I am silent because I am powerless. That was Joker. He was powerless initially. That is not Titaksha. Titaksha is without chinta. And then one among the Shatka Sampati is, of course, Shraddha, which is trust in the words of Shastra and Guru. Because this is important. Without trust in the Guru and the Shastra, how can why will you even approach a Guru for a teaching? To even approach a Guru with a request to teach me Vedanta, you have to have the trust in that Guru, that he will take you and lead you to Moksha. You will have to have the trust in that Shastra, namely the Upanishads and the Vedas, that they are on the basis of which these teachers teach, that it is a valid pramana, it is a valid source of knowledge. And the last is Mumukshutva, which is a burning desire for liberation. Without Mumukshutva, you will never, start the journey towards Moksha. But of course, these competencies themselves are not easy to have. All of us have experienced that we neither have Viveka, nor have Vairagya, nor have Shatka Sampatti. Mumukshutva is very, very less. It is very easy to discuss here. But when I go back, have a fight with the wife, or have a fight with the boss, all the titiksha goes to the drain. All Vaira, you see an ice cream, or you go to a shop with all new kind of dresses and everything, the Vairagya goes to the drains, right? So these qualities have to be practiced and developed. But it is again easier to say they have to be practiced than practicing. Why? Because there are particular obstacles which are there in our life, which cannot be simply taken out of the picture just like that. There are obstacles in the sense of the load of karma, the karmic load that we have inherited from our previous lives, the load of the papa karma, but also of the punya karma, but mainly the load of the papa karma that from the previous lives, the load of the vasanas and the samskaras that we have inherited from the previous lives, the load of the what is called as Arishad Vargas, the kama, krodha, the kama is attachment, krodha is anger, lobha, moha, lobha is greed, moha is delusion, and I think there are two more, matsarya, mada, matsarya, pride and jealousy. So these afflict all of us. These afflict our minds, these afflict our actions. We are not in control of our mind, our thoughts, our speech, and our actions. All these vasanas and Arishad Vargas, all of them affect us. So we have to first work to overcome this. So if you remember, I mentioned that Vedanta is the zenith of the Veda because it is standing on a foundation of the Purva Bhagas of Veda, namely Dharma Anusthana and Upasana. So Vedanta is the Anta because in the journey of spirituality of a person, where the Jnana Yoga comes the last because it directly leads to Moksha. Everything else which are preparatory comes first. Without preparation, you cannot directly jump to Moksha. Without preparation, you cannot directly jump to Jnana Yoga. So these preparatory steps are what the Karma Kanda and the Upasana Kanda teaches. What are they? How do we attain these competencies? How do we overcome? How do we remove the Arishad Vargas, Kama, Krodha, etc.? The Shastras also give the method to do that, many methods to do that. But basically, the larger landscape is that there is one important component of dharma, the other important component is bhakti. So in the component of dharma, there are two stages again. The first stage, if you remember the second verse, the first verse of Ishavasya Upanishad is that Ambassador Ji quoted, is about Ishavasyam idam sarvam. It is the knowledge of the ultimate reality. And the second line of the first verse says, Tena tektena bunjita. You, renounce worldly attachments. So that is the path for Jnana Yoga. But obviously not everybody is not eligible. So the second verse says, Kurvan eva hi karmani jiji vishet chatam samaha. So if you have desire to live for 100 years, that is, if you have worldly desires, if you are without vairagya, without all this sadhana chatushtaya competences, then the path for you is karma. Kurvan eva hi karmani. Na anyate asti, I forgot the second line of the second verse. The second line says that there is no other option to you other than performing the karma, in which the fruits of karma will not attach to you. So the second line is a very cryptic because it gives two kinds of teachings, two levels, two stages of performing karma. Performing karma means performing dharma. That is important because the Shastras speak about two kinds of karma, which is one is dharma, one is adharma. I already mentioned dharma means that which is beneficial, that leads to sukha, swarga, chitta, shuddhi, moksha. Adharma is that which is harmful, which leads to more and more bondage, more and more suffering. So this karma anushtana, the first stage is karma anushtana, which is swadharma anushtana, which means that one has to stay away from performing adharmic activities. That is, what the Shastras mandate as adharma, one should avoid performing that. Second, one has to practice one's own swadharma. That is, what is dharma for one person. This swadharma has two components in turn. And again, this dharma also mandated by Shastras. that these two components is Samanya Dharma, which is common to everybody, irrespective of context, which is basically ethical duties such as ahimsa, satya, asteya, truthfulness, non-stealing, and non-injury, and indriya nigra, etc. And there is also Vishesha Dharma, which is duties specific to an individual based on his context, his location, his position, his birth, and many, many other factors. So, performance of Swadharma involves two things: avoidance of adharma and performance of his own dharma, that is in the form of Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. Now, in the beginning, one will of course start with this performance with the Sakama Bhava, because I want these fruits, I am doing it because I want Sukha, I want happiness, I want Swarga, and that is absolutely fine. But our goal is to obviously to go to next stage, and this may not happen in this life also. It could happen in the next life also, because the efforts from this will be carried on to your next lives. The next stage of this Swadharma Anusthana is Karma Yoga, which is basically converting your Dharma Anusthana into Karma Yoga. See, Bhagavad Gita teaches Karma Yoga, but it says how that Dharma has to be performed. But it says that on the question of what Dharma has to be performed, it says you have to refer to other Shastras. What is that Shastras? Dharma Shastras. That is the Shruti and Smriti. So now the Karma Yoga is about converting this Dharma Anusthana that Shruti Smriti stipulates into a form of Karma Yoga by performing those actions with detachment and by surrendering the fruits of actions at the feet of Ishvara. So Karma Yoga starts with giving up the fruits of actions. Then as it matures, it culminates into giving up of not only the fruits, but even the very notion of doership of the action, eventually giving up of even the performance of actions, which is characterized as sannyasa, karma sannyasa. So such practice of Swadharma and Karma Yoga helps one to avoid the negative results of the Papa Karma of the past, and it purifies one by destroying the baggage of these Papa Karmas, and it also helps one to avoid the negative results that may incur if you were to perform adharma in this life also, because you are avoiding that adharma. It further helps in the purification of the mind, that is Chitta Shuddhi, by helping one to overcome the mental impurities such as Kama, Krodha, etc. And side by side this performance of dharma, one has to also indulge in, one also practice Devata Upasana, which may eventually take the form of Bhakti Yoga, or you may add, if Bhakti is the emotional aspect is not your nature, you can go for Patanjali Yoga. Here the initial Devata Upasana is needed because without the grace and blessings of the Bhagavan, Ishvara, no spiritual effort will bear fruit. Nothing. There is a traditional imagery which says about the life is like a chariot with two wheels. Our self-effort is the one wheel, Devata Anugraha is the second wheel. Without Ishvara Anugraha, you cannot move forward no matter how much effort you put. So Devata Upasana is very much needed. And for the blessings and Anugraha of Bhagavan. And Devata Upasana also helps Karma Yoga, because only then you will be able to surrender the fruits of actions at the feet of Ishvara. Only then you will be able to develop detachment. And then through such Devata Upasana, one may even mature into Bhakti Yoga, which is basically, you withdraw yourself from the world and fix your mind upon a Saguna form of a Devata, which the Vaishnava tradition has perfected in some sense. Or you could also add this Patanjala Yoga, take refuge to that path, wherein you will be focusing upon not a form of a Devata per se, but on some abstract notions that the Patanjala Yoga says. But even Patanjala Yoga, the Ishvara Pranidhana is needed. So the purpose and the utility of Devata Upasana, apart from the Devata Anugraha, is also Ekagra Chitta, one-pointed concentration. So you see, without the chitta shuddhi and ekagra chitta given by this dharma and bhakti practice, one will not be able to develop the viveka, vairagya, and the shatka sampatti, etc. needed. Because shatka sampatti, I said about uparati and samadhana, right? Nididhyasa is all about, focusing your mind on one entity. That focusing you have to develop through these paths, through bhakti yoga and Patanjala Raja Yoga and other yogas. And through Devata Upasana is the core of our Hindu tradition. That is what makes Hindu tradition, is at the heart. Because without the grace and anugraha of the Devata, even a one grass will not move. This was revealed in the Kena Upanishad. This was revealed to Indra itself. There is a wonderful story. Parabrahman when Indra wins the war with the Asuras, he thinks that he won it based on his own, energy, his own power. So to teach him, Brahman took the form of a yaksha and challenged the devatas. Neither the Agni Devata nor the Vayu Devata, nobody could defeat. And then Uma, who is nothing but Brahma Vidya, Uma is the personification of Brahma Vidya that we are discussing. She revealed the true nature of Brahman as the only reality, the only omnipotent reality. So this story of Indra in the Kena Upanishad has to be materialized in all our individual lives. That is what all spiritual path is about. That we work through bhakti, we start with dharma anusthana, add bhakti into it, keep practicing it for many, many lives. Then we attain chitta shuddhi and ekagra chitta. Then you practice Vedanta Shravana, you approach the Guru, Vedanta Shravana, Nididhyasa, etc. When that is matured and you are ready, then the Brahma Vidya will dawn upon you. Of course, this does not mean that unless you have perfected bhakti and dharma, you cannot study Vedanta under a teacher, or you should not study Upanishads or try to practice Shravana Manana Nididhyasa. No, what it means is that you can carry it out these, but in parallel, you have to do the required in the form of dharma anusthana, in the form of Devata Upasana. Without those two, this Vedanta practice will never fructify, because the very base is weak. Unless the base is strengthened, you will not be able to achieve the result. So this is my final slide. I just summarized what I have spoken. That I have just spoken about the Vedanta posits about moksha, which is the nature of Ananda, which is of the nature of Ananda itself, is the ultimate goal of life. And this is something which we know also in our hearts, because all of us want everlasting happiness without a trace of sorrow. Nobody wants unhappiness. And Vedanta describes this as moksha. And then Vedanta gives a technical definition of what moksha constitutes in the form of Brahma Atma Aikya Jnana, because the sorrow is caused by avidya about true nature of Brahman. Therefore, the solution is also vidya, or knowledge of true nature of Brahman. And then it lays down a method to attain this Brahma Jnana in the form of Shravana Chatushtaya, called as Jnana Yoga. And then it lays down the competencies that one needs to first attain to practice Jnana Yoga in the form of Sadhana Chatushtaya, Viveka, Vairagya, etc. And then again, it lays down the path to attain this Sadhana Chatushtaya in the form of Swadharma Anusthana, Karma Yoga, Devata Upasana, and Bhakti Yoga. All these are all relevant, as relevant today as it was in the past, and will continue to be relevant in the future, because ultimate desire of humans will always be an attainment of absolute and infinite and everlasting happiness without a trace of sorrow. And Vedanta alone, or rather Veda alone, or the Hindu Jnana Parampara alone, can teach this, has taught this a means of to attain it. So with this, I end my session. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I think I overshot my time by many minutes. I apologize for that. Thank you very much.
Nithin ji, on behalf of the Indian Embassy, I must thank you. I must applaud your truly superlative presentation. What really makes your presentation outstanding is that the very natural, very logical way in which you have presented all different elements of Vedanta and putting it really in the context of everyday life, aspirations of every single individual. And the way you began by like focusing on what is contemporary, that itself was very special. You are very right. The conception of Brahman itself is timeless. Purusha e vedam sarvam yat bhutam yatcha bhavyam. So present and past and future all unified by that vision of that notion of Brahman and Purusha. And the Gyan also, Gyananandam, Gyan Rupam, Gyan Bijam, Sanatanam. So naturally it has a timelessness and it's like a very basic conception. So when we talk about contemporary relevance, then we try to like pick up like this ocean of knowledge, ocean of treasure, and how different dots, different drops of that ocean of knowledge can help solve contemporary problems. I think that was the idea behind choosing the theme contemporary relevance. We are talking about contemporary challenges. Today's challenges are maybe a bit different what were 200 years ago or 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. So that is what we are looking for. How do we use the timeless wisdom for today's challenges of today's youth, today's generation? And I do believe that there are many elements which are continuing despite antiquity. They are like in human notion, as you rightly said, the basic desire of evading suffering, that remains. That was always the goal, the basic objective. So the presentation is very inspiring and it's comprehensible to everyone. I think it's worth watching by every individual. Also, I must applaud you for, I think, the best ever presentation of the distinction between asatya and mithya. I have not come across such fine distinction expressed in such like nice words. You did a really outstanding job on removing that misconception about Brahma Satyam and Jagat Mithya. How really nice. Also, I like your point of focusing on Shraddha. Shraddhaya Satyamapyate. So, and that is one issue which is confronting Hinduism, because there are so many so-called people and scholars of Hinduism who have no faith. They are only studying from the point of view of a very wild attitude of finding faults and criticizing. So to understand the reality of Veda and Sanatana Dharma, you have to have that bent of mind. Shraddha is a must. Without that, you can read, but you cannot understand. So once again, I must thank you, Nithin ji. The work you are doing is truly special, and we all appreciate your tireless efforts. And the way you are connecting like modern approach to interpretation and study of our ancient Indian wisdom deserves our support. Anything we can do, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much. Once again, it was a great presentation, and we were truly honored, truly privileged to have a scholar, thinker, visionary, narrator, communicator like you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nithin ji.